So, good morning and welcome, everyone. We are excited for you to join us today for the Planning for Recreation Access, or PRA Successful Applicant webinar. We would like to first start off by saying congratulations to all of you. You successfully made it through the grant application process and have been awarded funds from RCO. My name is Ashley Aramble. I am a grant manager here at the Recreation and Conservation Office. Helping out on the webinar today is also another grant manager. His name is Jesse Sims. And there he is, he's waving. We will be going over a lot of information today in a short time frame. So if you feel you have missed anything along the way, please don't worry. This is being recorded, and so that you guys can reference it later, further on in the grant implementation process. Later on in the presentation, a representative from the RCO's finance department, Doran Lauer, will join us later to explain how to submit reimbursements through PRISM Online. So the purpose of today's webinar is to get you off to a good start implementing your project. We want you to be just as effective at completing your project as you were at successfully receiving a grant. As we previously mentioned, this webinar is being recorded and can be accessed on the RCO website. We will cover information about the grant agreement, the implementation phase of your project, information on project design, as well as project requirements and deliverables. We also will touch on how to close your grant when your project is complete. If you have not set up a Secure Access Washington or SAW account and a PRISM Online account, we will walk you through that process. Then RCO finance staff will join us. They will cover how to submit materials for reimbursement of project expenses. And finally, we will have a question and answer session. For those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, during this presentation, please hold your questions until the end. We also ask that you mute yourself until you are called on. To ask a question, please raise your hand. This can be done by clicking on the reaction icon at the bottom of your screen. This will then pop up the area outlined in red, and you will be able to click on the raised hand. First off, we would like to introduce you to the Outdoor Grant Manager team. Each grant manager has a specific area of Washington state they oversee. We are spread throughout the state and are here to help you. It is important to work with us through the entire grant implementation process so that there are no surprises for either party down the line. Now, let's get the information started, beginning with the grant agreement. The most important document is the grant agreement. This is the legal contract between your organization and the state of Washington for the grant funding. RCO administers the contract on behalf of the state. The grant agreement is a legally binding agreement that awards grant funding to accomplish a public purpose. The grant agreement sets forth the terms for the work you need to perform in order to receive the grant award for your organization. Agreements will include information such as the project description, which explains the purpose and work you are to accomplish as part of the agreement. It will list the time period of performance. This is the time frame in which you have to accomplish the scope of work in order to receive the grant award. The agreement will also list the project funding, indicating the contribution by the state. Each agreement includes a list of eligible reimbursement activities, which are the work objectives or deliverables that must be accomplished in order to receive funding. The agreement will also have reporting requirements. Each agreement includes information about interim and final performance reporting that must be submitted to RCO. Finally, the standard terms and conditions. These are the legal, financial, and administrative requirements of your grant. The grant agreement also incorporates other documents and materials by reference, like your application materials, PRISM information, maps, and your evaluation packet. Together, these documents help form the scope of work and make up the entirety of the grant agreement. It is incumbent upon you and your attorney to review the grant agreement before signing. Here are a few sections that I will highlight. There is a restriction on assigning or transferring this agreement to other parties. The state is providing grant assistance for your organization to carry out the scope of this project. So if you have partners involved, remember that the organization that signs the agreement is responsible for seeing it through to fruition. Most projects will require some form of competitive bidding and procurement or prevailing wages. Other sections require you to be in compliance with applicable laws, such as SEPA or NEPA, the Endangered Species Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, Buy American Act, and so on. RCO will not determine for you which laws apply. That is your responsibility, and it is important that you understand what is expected. There are several important sections in the terms and conditions to review, but one you should be very aware of is that RCO has the authority to terminate the agreement in certain circumstances. A few reasons include, number one, failing to make adequate or measurable progress at implementing your project. Number two, if a sponsor decides to not follow the requirements of the grant agreement, or after providing notice in these situations, RCO is not responsible for any costs after the agreement is terminated, and in some instances could require repayment of any and all funds that you may have been reimbursed for already. Agreements will be issued in July. After the grant manager is done writing the contract, it will be sent to the sponsor. This is done through the electronic signature authorization form that was previously sent to you to fill out and upload to your project in Prism. The agreement will be first sent to the individual listed as the approver. Once the agreement is approved, it will automatically be sent to the individual listed as the signer. After the agreement is signed, it will automatically be routed to RCO for signature. Then a signed copy will be sent to you, the sponsor. Your planning project deliverables may vary depending upon the type of project you are working on. You will have through December of 2024 to complete your planning project. Project results in one or more of the following deliverables. Number one, for a comprehensive parks, recreation, and open space plan, it will need to meet the guidelines for grant program eligibility outlined in RCO's Planning Manual number 2. We highly recommend you read and familiarize yourself with the requirements. And the submission of the planning eligibility self-certification form is also required. So if your project is a comprehensive plan and your intent is to use the plan to attain eligibility for other RCO grant programs, you will need to contact Nick Norton. He is the RCO's Policy and Planning Specialist. We recommend you contact him at the beginning and throughout your planning process to ensure that you are starting on the right track. For those of you that are completing a comprehensive park and recreation plan, Nick will be putting on a webinar on Thursday, July 20th at 10 a.m. He will go over planning requirements and answer any questions. So if you have not received the Zoom meeting invite, please contact Nick or myself and we will get the meeting invite to you. If your project involves a site-specific plan, you will need to submit design or construction-ready plans or bid documents. Other documents may be required, such as a feasibility study, an alternatives assessment, cultural resource survey, SEPA, or permitting. There is a lot more in your agreement. It is very important that you are familiar with the details in it, along with the RCO grant program manuals that pertain to your project. Be sure to read it, have your attorney read it, and ask questions of RCO if necessary. Moving on to the project management and implementation section of the webinar. In this section, we will share with you information that will help you to successfully manage and implement your project. As always, your grant manager will be available to assist you throughout the life of your project. Your grant was evaluated and scored based upon the scope of work that was presented as part of your application. In order to maintain the integrity of the grant process, it is crucial that you complete the work as described in your grant agreement. Timely completion of your project is also very important. PRA grant contracts will be written for 18 months. The legislature has provided us direction that they want to see projects be completed quickly and efficiently. There are no time extension requests allowed in this grant program, so it is highly important to stay on point with the project milestones. Your grant contract has milestones that you must adhere to. These milestones are standard milestones specifically created for the PRA grant program. Some milestones are indicated as critical milestones. The critical milestones have dates that cannot be changed, such as the start and end date of your contract, as well as submitting your final plans to RCO, project progress reports, and project billings. It is important that you stay on track and stick to your milestones. If you need to adjust any milestones, you can discuss this with your grant manager. In your milestones, you will see a number of dates that have been inserted into the submittal of a progress report. The purpose of the progress report is to help sponsors, RCO, and others monitor progress and keep track of potential issues associated with implementing your project. RCO may withhold payment of a reimbursement request if you have not submitted a current progress report. We cannot stress enough how vitally important progress reports are to your projects. Upon completion of your project, a final report is required to document the actual scope of work that was accomplished. This should parallel what is in the grant agreement. You can start the final report at any time, but it must be submitted after your final billing. This is part of the overall grant project closeout process, which we will review later in the presentation. For site-specific plans, each project will need to follow Governor Executive Order 21-02. Each project must be evaluated for potential impacts to cultural and historic resources or to buildings and structures 45 years and older. The review is coordinated by RCO, and the result may indicate that further investigation or mitigation will be required, such as a survey or monitoring. RCO has initiated cultural resources consultation for those projects in this grant round. Local tribal governments and Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation have been contacted to review the project area for potential impacts to cultural resources. Review your contracts and work with your grant manager to be sure that you understand any further cultural resources work that needs to occur. Next up, we will quickly cover design considerations for those of you that are completing a plan for a specific work site. RCO encouraged sponsors to consider more environmentally friendly projects that support sustainable designs. That, for example, might use less water by installing only native plants or drought-resistant vegetation, using recycled materials, use of sustainable products like decking, porous paving, and high-efficiency lighting. Sponsors are required to comply with the terms of the contract, which include cultural resources, health codes, building codes, and accessibility. RCO will need to review plans somewhere around the 40 to 60% complete stage, and then at 90 to 100% complete stage. RCO prefers to have the plans and specs attached to your project in Prism. ADA access is important to do correctly and to integrate it into the site so it serves those who need accessibility. When it is done correctly, it can serve everyone equally. Asking questions and planning ADA access into the site design early makes for a better project. When access requirements are well planned and done the right way, your project will be better. If you design your project to serve all users by going beyond the minimum ADA requirements, you will have a project that is transparent and usable by everyone, regardless of their age or ability. All new construction and most alterations need to be accessible. Starting with the correct amount of accessible parking spaces, you will also need access routes to elements and features, such as picnic tables and fire pits. Playgrounds have specific requirements, such as the surfacing under them needs to be accessible as well. Knowing the difference between trails and access route is also very important. Requirements for access routes are more stringent than pedestrian trails, and they do not provide the same experience. Finally, you must make sure to provide as much access as possible for all users. Sometimes we see mistakes at the end of a project, which limits or doesn't provide the correct ADA access. This can be expensive to correct, and RCO could hold back retainage money until it is done. Make sure your surface is firm and stable and that you have access routes to all of the elements and features of the project that need to be accessible. Be sure to ask RCO for help if you have any concerns as your project moves forward. Up on the screen, there are several resources available to sponsors to use for your project. If you have any questions, please contact your grant manager. And now for the project closeout process. Project closeout includes several steps, some by RCO and some by the sponsor. The closeout process is the way that RCO documents the completed project. It is important to start the closeout process early and work closely with your grant manager. The first step to close out a project begins with the final plans being uploaded to the project in Prism Online. This is done by you, the sponsor. The next step is submitting your final reimbursement request. Your final reimbursement needs to be submitted to RCO prior to you submitting the final report. You can start your final report at any time during your project, but you must wait to submit it until the final bill is received. As part of the final report, you will be able to submit your final design plans or the final version of your comprehensive park and recreation plan. Hopefully, many of you here today have already signed up for Prism and Secure Access Washington. But for those of you who have not, you will need to access these programs in order to manage your project. Please pay careful attention to this segment of the presentation. Everything is done through our Prism Online Sponsor Workbench application. Prism is an online computer system open to the public to apply for grants, review and manage information on funded grants, and produce reports and projects. You can access Prism from our website. Go to the Prism login, which is circled in red on the screen. This launches the system, starting with Prism logon page. New users will need to create a new account. Once you have an account, you will log into Prism from this same screen. If you have any issues with logging in, please reach out to your grant manager for your geographic area. They will be happy to help or direct you to Prism staff as needed. Next, you will now need to set up a secure access or SAW account. Once your SAW account is set up, you can link Prism to it. Then you will be able to access Prism Online. Once you are logged into your SAW account, select Add a New Service. You can then search for the Recreation Conservation Office and add Prism. However, we have found that it is easier to search for Prism Online by the name, not by the agency it is associated with. After linking Prism to your SAW account, you will be able to enter Prism. This is the first page you see when you log on. It displays some overall information about your project. You can search for your project by the project number, by the sponsor, project name, and program. As you can see in the slide, we searched by program. The search results brought up all PRA projects. Once you find your project, click on the arrow at the start of the row. This will open up additional information you are able to access. This is very important because this is where you will navigate to in order to attach documents to the project, submit billings for reimbursement, and submit your progress reports. Along with the RCO's website, outdoor grant managers are available to help and are one of your absolute best resources. So it is important to utilize the website and the outdoor grant managers equally. Now, we're going to move on, and I would like to introduce you to Doran Lauer. He is a staff member from RCO's finance department, and he will be giving an overview of the e-billing process.
Hello, my name is Doran Lauer, Fiscal Analyst with RCO. And today we're going to be talking about Washington State RCO e-billings. Ashley just had you learn how to log in and all that. And once you're in there, there's a number of things we're going to talk about. Step one is, section one is getting paid, and section two is billing RCO. First things first, make sure you set up to be paid by RCO. To be paid, your organization must have a statewide vendor number. Fine, but how to get one? Go to OFM's website, link below. OFM can also update your SWV if needed. You choose direct deposit or warrant check via USPS. Once you received your SWV, report it to your OGM. We will make sure it is in PRISM. If you already have a number, let us know and we'll verify it in PRISM. If there are any questions about SWV, it is best to work with the OFM directly, the Office of Financial Management. Here is their contact information. Now let's overview the billing cycle. Start with a billing submitted by the sponsor in PRISM. RCO reviews the billing. The bill will be returned if changes are needed or approved and sent forward. RCO will process the billing. The state treasurer will release the funds and the direct deposit or warrant check will show up based on the SWV and you get paid. Let's start section 2, e-billing. All of the billing information is entered into PRISM Online. One important point to remember, this is a reimbursement grant. You must spend the money first. Then RCO will reimburse payment details, must be entered into the RCO billing. These 5 elements are key to your success. Paid to, amount, which could include expenditures or non-reimbursable items, description, check document numbers, transaction date. Manual 8 is a great resource for RCO reimbursement programs. Let's create a billing. Navigate to the PRISM home screen and bring up your project. Enter your RCO number, press enter. If needed, click the arrow to the left to expand the choices, as Ashley mentioned earlier. Click the dollar billings button. Located in the choices below your grant. Then the billing screen will show. On this screen, you can review the agreement balance, the required match, you can see that in the middle, any limits such as admin, AA&E, billed to date, paid to date, and all bills listed in the billing history at the bottom of the page. Now you're ready to create an RCO billing. Let's start with an overview of billing on PRISM Online. There are 6 steps for completing a billing in PRISM Online. Step 1, billing setup. Step 2, cost pages. Both of those require entries on your part. These next two steps are for information only. Step 3 is a billing summary, information only. Step 4 is payment information, information only. Step 5, only use if attachments are required. So unless you are notified by your OGM, you don't need to do the attachments. Step 6, certify and submit, check for errors, certify and submit. Step 1, billing setup. Enter the billing period, enter the billing scope, and several other items. And note, once saved in the upper left hand of the screen, you will be able to know whether you've got it correct in the right process. Step 2, cost pages. This is where you will enter all costs, one line for each transaction. Include the following items for each transaction. One line for each cost paid. And the 5 items you need are paid to, amount, description, check document number, transaction. This shows a complete transaction down here. The payment calculation button to see the reimbursement from Prism, right up here, the payment calculation button. We will talk about this more later in the presentation. Step 3, billing summary. Nothing to enter here. It shows a summary of information. The left side shows the agreement totals and limits. Middle shows total for this billing, and the left side shows billed to date. So again, a helpful information only page. Step 4 is on payment information. Again, nothing to enter here. It provides billing summary information, shows the Prism calculation. This information is available by clicking the payment calculation button at any time. So that blue button that we emphasized on the other page, right up by the payment amount 1,050 in this example, that is available at any time to see this information for payment calculation. Step 5, billing attachments. Attach billing document only if requested to do so. Step 6, certify and submit. Now you click on the billing for errors button and a red circle will show up right here, okay? Not in your situation, but in the demonstration here. Once you click check billing for errors button, look in the upper left hand and you will see the results. Green check marks are good. Red exclamation points need to be fixed. Errors are also listed in the red text on the top of the billing page. Errors will be listed in that red text, like I just mentioned. Billing in Prism Online. Read and agree with the certification by checking the box. Right here in the certification area. The submit box will then be enabled right down here. And when you click on that, you will get one of 2 final pop-up boxes. Click OK. Here is the second of the 2 pop-up boxes. Add note if desired, not required, then click submit. Now that the billing is completed, let's review the 6 steps. Step 1, billing setup requires entry. Step 2, cost pages require entry. Step 3 and 4 are information only. That's billing summary and payment information. Step 5, if you've been asked to do so, you can attach billing attachments. Step 6, very important, certify and submit. Check for errors, and then certify and submit. One more note, there's a way to use Excel to upload your payment entries. Let us know if you're interested in that process. It's very helpful for billings with 10 or more entries, but it's up to you. So let us know if you're interested. Billing screen, verify your bill has been submitted. A real key step right here. This red circle shows a billing and its status down there. Once the billing is complete, it will show in the billing history, that section in the red right down there. Ensure it is in process. If it is draft status, it has not been submitted. So this one is in process. You can see that on the right side of that red circled area, which is a good thing. But if it's draft status, we need to figure that out because there's something not going right for you. You haven't saved it yet or something along that line. Related manuals to this presentation, Manual 8, reimbursements. There is the website link to this information on rco.wa.gov. Other billing information can be found on rco.wa.gov as well. Here are a couple of Manual 8 need to know items. Some of the ineligible costs from Manual 8 we don't want to bill these for any reason. Ceremonial expenses are not allowed. Anything related to consumption of alcohol is not allowed. Bad debt expenses, fines and penalties, and make sure you use a verifiable payment method. Do not use cash or gift cards. Note that much more information is available in Manual 8, so check it out. Here are a few other resources that may be helpful. The first one is the RCO website, and then the RCO fiscal general email address. These fiscal contacts are available to help you. Doran Lauer covers sponsors that their name starts with numbers or the letters A through M. Sabrina Subia covers N through Z. Amy Sukut is personal service contracts, and Gerald Seed is the lead. Any questions? And at this time, we're going to take questions. Please contact us via email if you have a need to do that. And thank you for your time today.
Awesome. So at this point, the webinar information is concluded and we'd like to open it up for questions. So does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Hey, thanks for this information today. I'm Shannon with the Rainier Beach Henderson Corridor Planning Project, and you were talking about milestones, and that milestones, who will create those milestones?
So the milestones, we have created them, RCO creates them. And so when we send out the agreement, that's one of the things that we would like you guys to take a look at. And if any of them need to be changed, then you can talk with your grant manager about kind of tweaking them.
And they're set sort of based off of the project description, and like they're specific to our project, or are they similar for all? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, milestones are going to be a little bit different between comprehensive plan versus a site-specific plan where you're doing design.
Okay.
And then, Dorn, it looks like, there was a question from Lane County regarding how long it takes to get a reimbursement after submitting a request.
30 days.
That's what I figured, so. But I thought I'd let the fiscal guru take that one. And David, looks like you have your hand up.
Yes, I wondered if you could comment on the competitive bidding process and particularly this MRSC list, electronic bidding.
I actually don't know about that so much in regards. RCO will just say that you would follow your local jurisdiction rules or laws or policies to do that.
Okay, thank you. Another, maybe, if I could ask another question, since this is a reimbursement grant, do you folks have any mechanisms or recommendations for where we could go for funding, right, to prepay these activities?
That's a good question. You're saying you probably, your organization doesn't have any money in your budget to front the cost to get it going to actually start the reimbursement process?
Yes, that's correct. So we need to take out some kind of, I don't know, loan mechanism, or I just didn't know if RCO was aware of opportunities there.
Yeah, for me, I wouldn't have an answer to that unless there was a place in your, I mean, if even like, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if there was somewhere in your community, like a fundraising event to help jumpstart this within the community, if it meant something, and you could utilize that money to go, but that, it sounds like you're in a little bit of a pickle.
We are, but we've considered things like you just mentioned, and
Okay.
We'll work through it. I just wanted to get your tips and advice there. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
So Jesse, there are some questions in the chat. First from Teresa, when will this recording be available so that they can have a PM watch it? So usually it takes about, say today's Friday, so possibly at the latest, maybe next Friday, it'll be posted for you guys to review. And actually, Teresa, Jesse and I have previously put on this webinar back in May for our first round of applicants. And it's the exact same information. So it's posted on the website, on the PRA page on RCO's website. So you can go and view the previous recording as well. So the next question is, how do you add people for finance and billing? So you can add them, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, but usually the sponsor will contact me and I'll add it to the project. So your OGM can add the person, and they have sponsors have an option in Prism to also add the person as well, right?
Yeah. So if the person who's doing the billing also needs to have a SAW account and a Prism account also, if they're going to be involved in doing those billing. So that's just another piece of the puzzle.
Correct.
They need to be assigned a billing role.
Yeah.
And or an alternate project contact or project contact as a role. And also they need to have a relationship with the agreement of the particular project in Prism. But that'd be more on our side probably.
Correct.
But checking their role is important, because if they don't have the right role, they won't be able to do billing itself.
Right. The next question comes from Holly. We get the manual online, correct? Yes. If you navigate to the RCO webpage and you go to the PRA page, and scroll down, it says manual, and you can click on that and it'll bring the manual up for you. Let me see. Next question is, if our final project is federal funds, should we assume that it's Buy America and other federal requirements?
So I can touch base on that one because this is our gal and she's actually using this project, her PRA, as matching funds to a land and water conservation fund. So it's actually a kind of an odd duck. I don't think there's a lot of that going on with this round. But yeah, if you're utilizing federal funds, you are bound to the Buy America and other regulations that federal money is tied to.
Thanks, Jesse. So I don't see any more questions in the chat, but our team of OGMs is behind the scenes and they have included some links to the manuals and a link to the May recording of the webinar. So thank you folks in the background.
It looks like Josh has his hand up.
Oh,
Yeah, I actually have two questions. So I kind of played around in Prism last night, actually. And one of the questions I have is, when will we be receiving a project number? And then a follow-up to that, what is the timeline or projected timeline for getting grant agreements out?
So I can, and once again, Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong here, but next week, our management team, along with management and fiscal, they'll be turning those, the board just finally approved them this week. And so the project, we actually see the project number, but you guys can't at this point until it actually gets clicked over, and that'll happen next week. And so you'll be able to search and find it. And then basically after that has occurred, then your grants manager will be starting to write the agreement and try to get it out as quickly as possible. Sometimes it can take 2 or 3 weeks or longer, but there's also the cultural resource piece too. That might be slowing down the process because our cultural resource needs to review all the site specific plans, because the comp plans, they're not going to need to have that type level of review, but with the site specific plans, they're still working through that. So in perfect world, I'd say within the month that you would have an agreement. I know the OGMs will be making these PRA grants very high priority. There's a bunch of other grants coming out too that need to get into contract also. So
Thank you.
and then Shannon, it looks like your hand's up.
Yeah, thank you. I had a couple of questions actually. Let me get them here. So we're doing a planning grant, and we were kind of talking around, you know, how is recreation defined, right? We're looking at this kind of corridor of the street and, you know, that connects a transportation hub to a park, and along that corridor, you know, we're planning for recreation. And so thinking around, you know, is safety, you know, a part of recreation? Our gardens, obviously, yes, like a place, you know, place of recreation. But really, is that something for us to interpret and sort of define, or is there somewhere that's defined that on RCO's website?
Well, are you talking about a comprehensive plan? Or are you talking
Yes.
Yeah, so on a comp plan, obviously you're going to be looking at safety, and I mean, it's all tied around recreation. And obviously if recreation is the #1 priority, I mean, and it's like, think about like a trail. You design it for recreational purposes, but you also know that this trail very well could be utilized from a transportation standpoint. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So if you when you're going through this planning process, always keep in mind with the lenses and the recreation. And that ties over to more, also I want to chime in about Nicholas Norton, who's our planning specialist for RCO. He's going to be doing that additional presentation in July. And Ashley, what was the date again?
It's Thursday, July 20th.
Okay, and then everybody on this group is going to be getting an email with the webinar, with the Zoom invite and all that.
Correct. There should have been an email sent. I think Nick sent out an email to just kind of, hey guys, hold the date.
Okay.
And that would be for everybody that had a planning for recreation access grant?
Correct.
Award? Okay, I'm not sure if we got that, but I'll double check. So if I could just kind of say back what I heard from you, that thinking around, okay, if we want a trail, well, of course that trail, may intersect with transportation, or may, so we have to look at that as well.
Well, it could. I mean, trails
Yeah.
come in, there's trails, there's trails that are like greenway trails where they're connecting communities together. And so obviously people are utilizing for recreation, but some people might be utilizing it as a non-motorized opportunity to get to work. So yeah,
Okay.
those are things to be thinking about as you go through. But yeah, and for you, Shannon, do you have, or could one of my colleagues put Nicholas Norton's phone number and email address into the chat?
That'd be great.
Yeah, just so people can jot that down. I appreciate it, anybody out there. Because
And then
it would be real important for you, Shannon, to reach out to Nick. And that's, we want you at the very beginning to reach out and to have a conversation with him. And as you move through, so your plan, when it's all said and done, you'll be eligible for
right.
RCO grants and what have you.
Right.
Thank you, Allison Delwo. She just put it up there.
All the way.
Yeah, all the way to the side.
Thank you so much. One last question. So for the budget worksheet that we submitted, obviously like the submissions for this weren't super detailed, which we really appreciate. And so we're wondering, like, can we change around those budget items that were in our proposed worksheet? Is there a certain time period that has to happen? Is there a way we have to, do we have to justify why we're changing from, let's say, a certain contractor that maybe we don't actually need a urban agriculture, maybe we don't need a landscape architect for all the money we put in, but we want to use it for something else. So how can we change around budget items? Yeah.
There's flexibility. Yeah. And there's flexibility in that. And I would reach out to the grant managers that's assigned to you and talk to her or him regarding that. And
Okay.
it's especially before the agreement. And the main thing is, you said, like, the ultimate thing is for you said, I'm going to walk away. Here's my product. This is the scope. Like, I'm walking away after this all said and done with a comprehensive management plan for my organization or my geographic. Yeah. That's the most important thing. There's, internally, there's ways that you need to say, oh, I'm going to spend less here and maybe more over here. But when it's all said and done, the product is complete. So,
okay. Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because those would be considered minor scope changes. It's nothing major, so yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to call out Kelly from Yakima Greenway. Do you have a question, even though you don't have your hands up? No, maybe not, Kelly. I just want to make sure everybody has all the answers, this is a good opportunity. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking out loud, you can email myself or Ashley or Doran after the fact if there's additional information. And And then also Monica Atkins, she can, if you reach out to her, she can actually tell you who you're assigned to, what your grants manager name and contact information is.
So Jesse, there is a question in the chat from Colleen. It says, for projects without cash, excuse me, for projects without cash on hand, would it be acceptable to negotiate net 45 days with suppliers, be reimbursed by RCO, and then pay the suppliers, eliminating the need to have cash on hand?
Mark, are you still there? Just going to defer this to my CFO, Mark, if he's still there.
Yeah, Doran, I'm still here, and I saw that question, and while it may work for City of Seattle, we don't do our grants that way. Everything we do is a strict reimbursement. So offhand, I'd say no, unfortunately.
Thank you, Mark.
And another question in the chat is, are cultural resource surveys needed for planning grants?
And the answer to that would be, a lot of times the cultural resource survey, they'd be eligible to do in your comprehensive plan, but you might not actually know. So the answer is you don't have to have a cultural resource survey in your comprehensive plan. It might behoove you to do so if you actually knew where, when it's all said and done, but you're at this point, this is a higher level as a comp plan, you know, thinking about your 10-year capital. Yes, so I would say at that point, because you don't even know where things would be going, you know, you're not site specific enough to actually do a cultural resource plan. So that was a comp. If that helps, Colleen. And looks like Holly has her hand up.
Yeah, hello?
I have Holly has her hand up.
You know what? I actually might be Holly.
Okay. Okay. No,
I've zoomed in with her sign in.
Okay.
And Holly and I are both new to this, and I'm a recently retired guy who is wondering how we have a new PRISM application, you know, and so on and so forth. The operational piece of it for me is just interesting on what you guys have found best when going through all of the process, right? How does it work the best? It's, you know, there's a lot of clicks, there's a lot of detail required, and it seems like it's like one person who does that because they see all pieces of it. They see what comes in, they see what goes out.
Are you talking about the billing process exclusively? Yeah. That is something that you could call myself or Sabrina or Gerald or Mark anytime and ask about. If you want to set up a meeting for a particular training, we could go through the process with you, or if they're just specific questions, you can ask those too at any time.
Oh, that's great. We'll say probably the first time when we do it.
Yeah, yes, definitely. We could go through it. We can set up an appointment with what's your sponsor name going to be?
Yeah. Well, again, Holly and I will get to that point when we need to, right? Okay. We have several weeks here to kind of prepare.
Okay.
What we're doing.
Yeah, just contact any of us and we'll get you set up with the right person to go through that with and set up a training for your organization or for 2 people or whatever it needs to be.
Perfect.
I'm an old guy too, so we're all kind of old guys, so except for Sabrina.
And then Ardell, looks like you have a question.
Yeah, I'm back again. Since I am the odd duck around here, I figured I might as well ask. Is RCO going to act as the certified agency for all of those people that have federal funding projects to establish like the DBE goals and all that jazz, or do we need to seek services elsewhere?
You know, Ardell, I'll need to look into that more. That because, yeah, this is kind of a combo between Deanne Beck and myself for both the Land and Water Conservation Fund project dams.
Yeah,
And
I'm
yeah,
treating this kind of like with our transportation projects. We've always been told $1 federal money in, the project's federalized. So since this is mainly federal dollars coming from the Land and Water Conservation section, or Land and Conservation section, I want to make sure that we're expending the funds in the proper manner. And if it requires us to have DBE goals and go out for requests for qualifications, etc.,
yeah,
I kind of need to know now.
okay. So normally you are correct. When you merge the two, you're using it as a matching grant, and one's fed and one's state dollars, then it's going to go to whatever the stricter rules are, you know, and it would, you know, it would basically, the money gets merged together, Ardell, between the PRA and the LWCF. It now becomes one project, basically, which then you would need to follow the stricter guidelines of the feds. That would be my best assumption, but I want to dig more into that and make sure that I am correct before you move forward.
I would assume so, but who establishes the goals that the federal level has, I guess, is the big thing.
Yeah, so I think next week Deanne will be back from vacation, and I think we could maybe need to set up a meeting together.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you, Ardell, and I love the odd duck. It's never just normal with us, is it? Yeah.
Quack, quack.
Oh, that's a good one. So Lane, can you briefly explain the difference between the role of signer and role of approver in PRISM? So there's if you think of like a mayor of a city, and then you think of a public works director, right? So think of the public works director as the signer, and the final approver, the person, you know, that's basically representing the agency, would be the approver, if that helps. So it's just the hierarchy of span of control within an organization. And then you can have like multiple signers or reviewers within the electronic signature, you know, form. You could have, you know, have somebody look at it, and then once they approve it, then it gets automatically emailed to the next person. And then once they approve it, then it finally goes to the ultimate approver, which then now the agreement would be signed by your organization and sent back to RCO. So that was a good question, probably a question that a lot of people in this meeting may have not known.
So I noticed that we had skipped a question from Holly. It says, can we go over how to add someone who will be paying bills? So Holly, I'm going to put my email and my phone number in the chat, and I want you to give me a call and we can walk through that later. And that also goes for everyone else on here. If they need any help, do not hesitate to contact. All right, so it looks like we have 1 minute left. Are there any questions? None? guys have utilized this question and answer session. Awesome. All right. Well, with hearing no questions, we're going to end this webinar. And like I said, you guys feel free to reach out to any of the grant managers, and we are more than happy to help you out and get you pointed in the right direction. Thank you for attending the webinar today, and good luck.